Welcome to the Competitive 40k podcast brought to you by Vanguard Tactics. This is a Warhammer 40k podcast where we analyse the meta and develop strategies to help you become a competitive 40k player. I'm your host, Stephen Box, and it's my mission to help raise the standard of the game both on and off the tabletop. So today we are just recording episode number 10. We're in double digits, and I have got with me tonight two very special guests. One that you haven't heard from before, but is a very good friend of mine and also my training partner, and also bringing back Jack Downing. How you doing, Jack?
I'm very well, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. You coping okay at the moment, working from home?
Yeah, getting used to new measures, but just got to get on with it. And the sun is shining, which is good. And it's given me some chance to paint up some miniatures, which is always good.
Nice. We can talk about that shortly. So tonight we're also joined by Joe Coles. How you doing, Joe?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Not a problem. No, it's a pleasure to get you on, mate.
Yeah, it's taken you a while, but I think that has something to do with the fact that you called me a liability.
You are a liability, Joe. Yep. You are a liability. And if anything goes wrong tonight, it's Joe's fault, okay?
Good to know.
Just to let you know.
Good to know.
It'll be your fault, Joe. Anyway, on tonight's show, we have got a great little lineup today. In our 40k and focus section of the podcast, we're going to be talking about how practice makes permanent. Now, you might be thinking, hang on, Steve, it should be practice makes perfect. No, it doesn't. It makes permanent. So we're going to talk about that, which is all about making everything become subconscious in the game to help you become a top 40k player. And then we're also going to be talking about my SoCal Ultramarines list that I ran in our Better the Meta section. So we're going to teach you and talk about some strategies how to beat Ultramarines, because I believe when everyone gets back to gaming, the Iron Hands and the Imperial Fists will be down and the Ultramarines will be up. So no doubt we'll see a lot more Ultramarines lists kicking about. So this episode will give you the tools and the knowledge and the know-how how to beat the Ultramarines and maybe some things that you could expect to see. And then finally we're going to kick off, or finish off should I say, with a couple of listener questions that I've had over on my daily lives that I'm doing on YouTube. So every day I've committed now, while we're in lockdown, for the next 21 days I'm going to go live every single day for 30 minutes to answer your questions. And these were two great questions that came up over the last couple of days, and I didn't get a chance to answer them, so I thought, hey, let's talk about them on the podcast tonight. So we're going to discuss those later, but really, really good questions, I think. So, Jack, practice makes permanent. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think for me it's getting enough reps in with a certain, more so faction rather than a specific list, to a point where you know the army in depth, you know the tactics and how you're going to approach each and every game against a variation of different opponents to make sure you can perform at your best at any given tournament.
Yeah, nice. And I think actually you've just said something there which we didn't even discuss prior to this. You mentioned there practicing in knowing your army, not just your list. And already I'm thinking, actually, that's got some great usage, because when you know exactly the army inside out, as the meta changes, you know how to adapt your list straight away, don't you?
Yeah, or as in the ITC changes, the missions change, you know which units you can start to lean into to answer new problems, which could be from a new mission or it could be from the meta evolving. You need to know what tools you've got in your entire codex or supplemental, wherever the source is you're grabbing from, to answer certain problems.
Yeah, I love that. Joe, what does it mean to you, practice makes permanent?
So, like Jack said, like knowing your codex, knowing your army, knowing your stratagems and when kind of best to use them, but also kind of getting your homework in to know what other armies are being used and what's popular, and kind of having an eye on what's coming into rotation, as it were, and what's going to be going out. So when you do face up against that opponent, you're aware of what kind of tricks they're going to pull on you,
Yeah, nice. Yeah, good. So we'll break this down. We've got about 8 different sort of subcategories here. So we'll go through these as to what you can do and put in practice and give you some top tips. So the deployment phase, probably one of the most, and I would say the most important phase of the game. I see so many games that are won and lost in deployment. Jack, you're notorious for this, mate.
Yeah, I was just literally about to say, with an army that I'm practiced with, I know exactly how to deploy. So with my Tau, I know exactly how it does, and it's almost, I don't really need to see what the opponent are doing too much. There's a very basic concept that it all balls together, and it can move quickly. It can Monkar and then shift, and that's fine. It just needs lines of sight to then start shooting. But when I try to use Raven Guard or Orcs, I really struggle with deployment, and often make a mistake of being too aggressive or too defensive, and which leads to big problems. But that's because I haven't had the amount of games and reps in with it. That's the big difference, really.
Yeah, I can remember like early on in your tournament sort of season, I'd be like, "Oh, Jack, how'd your game go?" You'd come over and literally first thing you would say to me was, "Deploy like a chump."
Yeah.
And you lost the game because of it, didn't you?
Yeah, I think everyone has one of these learning experiences when your opponent would. This is pre-ITC with the whoever rolls to be attacker goes first is when you could deploy your army, make your opponent take the first turn.
Yeah.
So I had that situation happen to me. My opponent deployed first. I then counter-deployed really defensively. Then they gave me the first turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's stuff like that. I was forever deploying incorrectly.
Yeah.
For the wrong situations. Like in a certain matchups, you recover. But if you won your first game or won your first couple of games, those mistakes won't wash, and you'll be found out, really.
So how does then, by playing the same army over and over again, which was kind of talking about here, how does that help you in deployment?
So now with my list, I know how far, I know all my threat ranges with all my movement. I know, and I may even sacrifice a turn of shooting to then move into a better position for a turn 2 to hit them hard turn 2. Okay. But I know that I don't. But from practicing, I know I don't need to shoot an opponent for 6 turns. I only need to shoot them for 3 turns. So actually, I can sacrifice a turn 1 of shooting, deploy defensively outside their threat ranges, then jump and then hit them. But then I've got 2 or 3 turns to then do the damage and then take the board after that. So that's how that kind of army kind of plays out, and that's the strategy that I've built around. I don't need to kill someone with all my guns turn 1, which when you first pick up the army, that's what you think you have to do. You assume that Tau need to blow their opponent off the table in turn 1, but it's just not going to happen because with good balls, line of sight blocking, you won't be able to do it anyway. So you've got to evolve to the terrain and the missions that you're playing.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Yeah, and I think something that I've noticed as a Blood Angel player with my characters and the way that I deploy, I kind of have a set format, and I barely even look up at what my opponent's done. Really, I kind of have a quick look. I look at where they've deployed certain things to go, right, can I get out of line of sight? But once I've picked my zone in that area, it all goes down in one place in a very similar format. Though to the point with my Blood Angels, and I'm actually going to be doing a webinar on exactly how I deploy Blood Angels in particular, because I know there's been a lot of interest there. So that'll be coming, and I'll put all the information out on the old mailing list as per usual. But I'm very sort of rigid, and I deploy in the same way every single time, no matter who I face. Because I need auras to be in certain ranges. I know that this unit needs to go there, so then when I move like my Death Company forward, I know that the first model they hit back to is Ashtaroth, who's on the front line. Then I've got enough scouts in certain places to protect them, so on and so forth. And you only learn that from practice. Like, well, the other day in our battle report, I was actually, and this is why this topic's come up, because I felt slightly rusty in our game, in the game that I played against you, Joe, just before the sort of the strict regime came into. I felt really, really rusty in that game. I've literally, bear in mind, I've just come off the back of 3 really good successful tournaments, and I've been playtesting every single week with the Blood Angels for the last 3 months, and I've just took my foot off the gas for the last 3 weeks. I made mistakes, but I was not making those mistakes 3 weeks ago. So, yeah.
The interesting thing that jumps out at me when he's saying once you've picked your spot, you know, it's a routine. So you put, how much time do you reckon you save from that in your deployment phase?
Oh, mate, if I could just make a template and stick it down, it'll be great. I could make a movement tray of my army, stick it down on my tray. Right, here we go, put it down here.
And that time that you've bought time for making key decisions later in the game, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah, because time is everything, and you don't want to be wasting time.
Yeah, that really helps you in, like, if you roll off to see what side you're choosing as well, because you can look at the deployment options and be like, well, my army, my template would fit perfectly in that spot, whereas I'd actually have to move it around a bit, maybe have units out of position if I chuck it in the other deployment zone. So that makes that decision a lot easier to make as well.
Yeah, and also we're going to probably come on to this later, but I think that's deployment phase overall summary. Joe, what's a top tip for somebody for, you know, what can people be doing right now at home, you know, in terms of deployment?
You can, if you've got a bit of open space,
so like a 2x4 table, yeah,
like a 2x4 table, or if you've got like a long kitchen side table, which is like 6 foot long, like if you're lucky, maybe a little bit shorter, but you can practice deploying your army, and you can go like, okay, in this game, I'm coming up against a highly aggressive, fast-moving army, so I'm gonna practice deploying against that. Like, what's my best way? Where my screening units going and where my character's going? And then once you've got that down, maybe take a picture of it or write it down, kind of thing. Remove them, put the models back in the same place. They're roughly in the same place. You're all good. And then you go like, okay, next, my opponent is a cagey player, and I need to get that hit on them quick. So I'm going to deploy like this kind of thing. And then you can go, my opponent's got infiltrators or deep strikers. How am I going to kind of keep those away? And you can even like go, okay, I'm going to do my first turn movement as well. Where are they going? What are they doing? And you can just do that on your own, and not even during this time period that we're going through now, but in the future. Say you've gone out and you've bought a Tau army, for instance, and you've never used it before. You're cool. This is what I'm going to do going forward. So when you do play your first game, you've got a bit of knowledge going into it already. Yeah,
definitely. And I think what you can do there is some, you know, just to add to that, go through every map deployment. So there's 6 different maps. Practice them all. Practice if you're going first. Practice if you're going second. And put some terrain down on the table as well. And if you're looking for a terrain format, check out the LVO 2020 terrain. Check that out. Look at how they deployed their maps in the terrain moved for each deployment zone. So follow that. You don't need that much terrain to really be able to do that.
And if you haven't got terrain, you could just use bits of paper and just write on it small L, large L, ruin kind of thing, and cut them out into the shapes.
Absolutely, yeah. Big A4 bit of paper, you know, with permanent marker, draw a big L on it, like 8x8 sort of thing, 8 inches by 8 inches. Yeah, you're dead right, Jack. And it's literally like a theory task, isn't it? So you've got, remember guys, 6 maps. You could potentially go first, you could potentially go second. So that's 12 different scenarios you need to deploy for. And then as Joe said, you could then tweak that. Okay, what if I was playing orcs and they could do jump, so I need to screen out? What if I was playing against a gun line? Do I need to be a bit more aggressive in terms of using the terrain a bit closer? Do I want board control? Do I not? Do I want to hold? Do I want to, you know, then you can add that, you know, a little bit more. Cool. I think that's good. I think we're giving some top tips there. So, Jack, where does playtesting come into this? Now, playtesting's something that we go into a lot of detail on the mentorship program, but give people a brief overview of some of the things that maybe you and I have done in terms of playtesting. What can you be doing, in how can playtesting help you Because there's a difference between playtesting and playing a game, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And
So
what is the difference for you there?
so play testing, say we may meet up for a day, and I'll say I want to play test my Tau, and you go, okay, great, I'll bring, and you'll ask me what I want to test against. I'll say I want to test against knights, blood angels, and orcs, for example. Then you could bring those armies or models, or we could even proxy in those scenarios, and we'll probably play the first 2 or 3 turns of those out, just so I can just get a feel about how my army interacts with these different style of armies. How do I kill? How do I gain the ball control? Do I need to sit back? Do I need to push forward? How much damage does a unit of 30 boys do against a Riptide? All these kind of questions that you need to. You can theory hammer some of that out, but it doesn't beat that practical examples and running it through, and and having a live opponent to make decisions to counteract what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's what I kind of see playtesting is, and a test game is more just, it's just a bit more fun kind of thing. You'll practice some stuff out, but then you're trying to run the whole game. But we've actually, because I used to have problems with, especially when I started learning Tau, was closing out games. What I was doing was I was killing opponents, but not winning the game at the end, because I was being far too defensive. So I think we ran a few games where we kind of set up 4, 5, and 6 turns.
Yeah.
So the back end of the game, and say, right, you're 5 points down, go and win the game.
Yeah.
And then we kind of set it up that way.
Yeah.
That's made a huge difference to how I play and how I convert, the losses into draws, the draws into wins, and and all that kind of stuff. Squeezing out those extra points just to make the big difference.
Yeah, and I think like to add to that as well, like you and I used to just play, didn't we? Like you'd bring your Tau, I'd bring my whatever, and we'd play a game. But then if it started to go badly, probably one of us got a bit salty, right? It all happens. Yeah. But when we adopted a bit more of a play testing, as in you're testing yours against mine, the purpose of this, there's a distinct purpose, is for you to really like own the Tau, to make it your own, to smash it, to do really well. I am now your teammate, right? So therefore we have a different mentality when we were playtesting. And there was a point in one of our games, I said, right, what are you going to do, Jack? You said, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. I said, okay, cool. I let you roll it out, and I said, you still lost. But if you'd have done A, B, C, D instead of X, Y, and Z, you'd have actually won the game. Let me show you. Because I'm looking at it as, I hope he doesn't do this against me. Like, I can see the other side of the coin because I'm astute enough to know what's going on. And then I showed you that, didn't I? And it's something like, with your Tau being able to like something like move in the charge phase or something. And there was a couple of little interactions there. Yeah. And you got a bit bogged down with killing a unit. And I said, you don't even need to do that. You just need to do this, that, and the other. And when you're playtesting, the difference is there is like to some of the stuff like me and Joe literally playtest every week because he lives around the corner from me. Like Joe, is there been anything that you can remember which you and I have done in terms of playtesting which has really stuck out to you?
So what we've done like deployment. So there's a brief period where you started Gene Stealer Cult, and we played a game, and I did abysmally. Like I was dead in like 2 turns, and this was like my GT kind of list. And what we did is we just went over how best to deploy. So we sat down and we figured out what is the best deployment. And you're like, I'm a Gene Stealer Cult player. I'm going to put my models here. Bam, bam, bam. Put your models down like this, and then like your planes at the back. How are we going to screen them out, kind of thing? Like just trying to like. So you say you've already got the list figured out. You know what you want to, and that's what you want to use. Now it's you work together as a team, but one of you's got the bad guy mentality on this one. Like, how do I get the best efficiencies out of my units, for instance? So we might just go, we deploy that list, and then we go first turn, and we'll both sit and we'll both stand, talk, and I'll be okay. I'm going to move this model here, this Razor Wing jet fighter to this corner, this Razor Wing like only a few inches forward, this Razor Wing forward like that. Then I'm going to move this Ravager back a few inches, this one forward, this one sideways, and then fan infantry out in a certain way. And then we'd run the Gene Stealer cults next turn, and then it'd be like, okay, this is the logical steps for the Gene Stealer cult person. He's going to do this, and this. Oh, it's killed all your stuff. Okay, we'll rewind. Okay, move your Razor Wings again, but move this one here at a slightly less obtuse angle, maybe less as far, and then rewind it. Just keep going over and over and over.
So you can go back a turn, can't you? So I think that's it. You can. So for you guys, top tips there: create yourself little scenarios. Yeah. So like the deployment one is great. Like how to, effectively screen units out. Here's one for people if you're using flyers. Practice moving your 3 or 6 Dark Eldar flyers for 6 turns of the game. Yeah?
Yeah.
Even if you have to make a to scale piece of paper with little post-it notes as aeroplanes, literally practice moving 6 planes for 6 turns and none of them flying off the board. And actually, I would say practice doing that on a 4x4 rather than a 6x4. And if you can do that, then you've got your planes locked down. Do you know what I mean? And that's something you can be doing right now on your own. Jared from our mentorship program, he had the same problem. He's done it, and he's really mastered that, and that's great. Okay, cool. I like that. I think there's some good tips there. Same for like Blood Angel players. One of the videos I'm going to be releasing over on YouTube, which is actually a video from the mentorship program. I'm going to give everyone access to it so you can see what it's like, and I really want you to practice this, is wrapping and trapping effectively. And that's just one of like 8 advanced techniques in the game. I've even got stuff like how to maximize Overwatch, how to stop being wrapped, how to blow up vehicles, how to just wrap units that come out of vehicles, loads of different like technical things, but a little bit of playtesting with those particular units that you want to get good with can go a long way. So Jack, next up, threat ranges. Talk to us about how you can become competitive using the same army with threat ranges. Where does that sort of fit into this whole puzzle?
Well, if you're practicing with a certain faction, the movements and ranges of all your weaponry just become second nature to you because you've had the practice with it. You've used it so many times, so you know how far your movement. So you don't have to look at the book. You could just instantly move your models. You know how much range you need, and you can almost start to get a feel for it. You can see it on the field without even getting a tape measure out. You know roughly by eye how far these guys can see, or how far they can move, or how far they can shoot. And
I think that becomes really important because rather than when you're playing a game and subconsciously you have to check the rule book to clarify the range of a weapon, you're probably not going to do it because it's time consuming, right? Whereas Jack, how far does a Riptide move?
12.
How far do you shoot?
36.
Okay, cool. So you know that you can, with your model down on the table, you can move 12 inches and you can roughly, like let's say you put a dice down where you want your Riptide, where he currently is, you measure out 12, right, he's going to end there. You can quickly, without checking the rule book, draw out 36 inches. Yeah, cool, that's in range of that unit, great. And you can move on, yeah? So as you're moving, you can go, okay, rather than just drawing a straight line of, let's say, 48, your maximum threat range, you know that, okay, I could go to an angle, a 40-degree angle, and still get in range of 36, and I can be in range of the back guy because actually I'm going to get my front guy or the guy furthest away to shoot the front of the squad, but even when models are removed, I know this guy is then still in range.
Exactly, and that nicely links onto that deployment section we just talked about, is that you deploy. I deploy knowing where I want to be on turn 1, at the end of my turn 1 movement, where I want to be at the end of my turn 2 movement. It's that overall strategy that's coming together. So I know I can get firing lanes, down good alleys or to certain to the back reaches of the board? Where do I need my guns to be in certain times of the game?
Yeah. And like Joe, how many times recently have I failed a charge?
It's very rarely, although scarily, I'm pretty sure that your dice are either magnetic or weighted. The amount of times I've gone, I need to do a 10-inch re-rollable charge, and I fail it 9 times out of 10.
So you should.
You need to speak to Ben Jones.
And I need to speak to him. I need to get some of those very special cherry red dice. But but every time against you, you make pretty much all of your charges. I'd say.
Yeah.
I'd say 90%. There will be the very rare occasion where the dice have fated you to fail, and no matter what you do, they're like, no, not to.
People ask me this all the time, right? When I'm playing Blood Angels, like, oh, what if you fail your charge? I don't really fail charges. And the reason for that is because I'm setting them up so that they are pretty much unfailable, or unfailable to a point where it doesn't, if I do fail, it doesn't matter. Yeah?
But there will be times when you'll choose not to shoot as well. I mean, that's a little talent to learn. Like, if you're setting yourself up for a charge, you need to force yourself not to shoot at that unit, because if you do, your opponent will always remove the model that kind of makes you fail.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So that's where, like, knowing your threat ranges, whether it's charge threat ranges, shoot threat ranges, psychic threat ranges, are extremely important if you're an Eldar player or such like. So knowing all that is very, very important, especially with smites, because you can only target the front closest model. So you actually need to start to put units in range of the back guy, not just the front guy. Little things. Cool. So, auras and buffing characters. Where does this come into it, Jack?
So again, it's back to deployment. If you don't put your character in the right place, he could be potentially chasing after the units he wants to buff all game. Because you realise that you deployed on the right flank, you actually need to be in the left flank, and your models that can move quicker, but than your characters. So all of a sudden, do you move your models and your army outside of your buffing range to interact, or do you restrict their movement to stay within your range? I think there's quite nice little tricks coming out with the if you got a first turn now in ITC. If you got a fast-moving army, you could put a characters at the front line and move and advance them first at the field, and then jump the rest of your army around it. I think that's a nice little trick that you can start to bring into your games to maximise that aura benefit, make sure it's in the right place.
Absolutely. And here's a question for you. Do you put your characters down first, second, in terms of when do you put your characters down? I'd be interested to know for it as a Tau player. Do they go down first of all and you build your army around it, or do you, I don't know, how do you do it?
I typically, because the Riptides are so big, I usually put the Riptides out first.
Because they got the biggest footprint, you need to make sure they fit.
Yeah, and then I'll place the characters down, and then I'll make subtle adjustments to the Riptides to make sure they're in the auras, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I generally place the Riptides out, roughly where I want my castle to be. Then drop my characters. Then it's the drone swarm that comes in around.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Joe, what about you? Any tips for the guys in terms of auras and buffing characters?
I think, knowing the size of your units, but also like memorizing the size. You like with the practice deployments when you're at home, you can literally practice making sure and deploying your army so that character's always touching where it needs to go. So, like with like an Ultramarines player, and you run loads of aggressors and buffing characters. I always think like the best way of doing it is put your front line units down first, which are going to be on the line, or you know that they're always going to be the nearest. Then fill the half circle, as it were, with your characters, and then build around them.
Yeah.
The last, they've got to go down in the middle.
Yeah.
So you've got your blockers, your characters, then the fluff to go around the outside, as it were.
Yeah. See, with my Blood Angels, I put all the characters down first.
Yeah.
Because then I know.
Because there's so many of them, that's half of your army.
That's the biggest footprint, yeah, exactly. When you're running 10 characters, they got to all go down first, but there's a very particular order that they go down in, and I then like alternate units around them. So when I deploy models, I deploy in like an alternating fashion with my scouts. So it goes squad A, then squad B, squad C, squad A, B, A, B, A, B, and I create like a ring of rosies around these characters. So when you've got planes or whatever, you could fly over, but I know you've got to get through at least 2 units of scouts before you can even target them. So they go down first for me because they're like, my army revolves around those characters. Same with my sisters. Now, I recently made a video about, and it's called The Best Combat Unit in 40k. I wanted something fun, and I really enjoyed editing that video because I've been putting a lot of effort into my editing recently. And it talks about Sister Repentia. And a lot of people said to me, oh yeah, but, you know, they need a lot of buffs, so they're not actually that cheap, right? And, you know, a lot of people's arguments were that they're not that strong on their own, but in competitive 40k, we always use buffs, we always use auras, we always use stratagems, and if you're not really being very competitive. So, when it comes to buffing characters, again, Joe, with my Repentia that I've been using against you recently, how often do I get the extra attack from the priest, the +1 strength?
Oh,
how often do I get it done?
Every time.
Every time.
Because you know where they're moving, what they're doing. I think the problem, like you said, with the people like, oh, they're not that good, or they need those buffs. I think when people look at reviews externally, they only look at that one unit on its own. I think a lot of people forget that, like, when you're reviewing it, you take the whole battlefield, your whole army list into account.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a little one to remember that it's not that one specific stat line that you're reviewing.
Mm-hmm.
You're reviewing like everything that they have access to that makes them good.
I think they're a good example because that you can buff any army, any unit in your codex you can buff, but it's knowing how far to buff a certain unit.
Yeah.
To make, because it might become, it might be a waste of CP, or it might just overkill everything, or X, Y, Z. There's a number of different things. But then it's finding the right blends of buffs to make it efficient.
Yeah.
Which the Repenter are very efficient.
Yeah. And I worked out, so a good example of that point, Jack, is that how many models do I run of Vanguard Vets and Sangers? There's a magic number that I use every single time with Blood Angels. It's not 10, it's not 5, it's 8. Because I know 8 Sanguinary Guard get every job done.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Deathwing Knights. I don't need a unit of 10.
Yeah.
It's just a waste of points.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gaining those little bits of efficiencies, which you only gain that knowledge via practice, don't you?
Exactly that. And this is what you can practice at home, is like, when I move my characters, you can practice drills like, I need to get from here to there. Let's say, for argument's sake, you're 18 inches apart from your enemy's lines. How are you going to get your characters giving all the buffs that you need to that unit? And then you can start to practice this at home so that you do get all your buffs and everything off. So, I mean, in terms of, like, when we think about this, a little bit of a list building thing here in terms of if you know something's efficient. So in order for the Repentia to be useful, you need the following: a Repentia superior, and I talk about all this on that video, so go and check that out as to how crazy these ladies are. But you need a Sister Repentia, you need a missionary, you need an Imagifier, and you need a Canoness. Okay, you need 4 characters. Now, you also need Celestine to make him that next level, but she's so good on her own, I'm not even going to include her because she's just a beat stick for her own points. I think she's worth, easily her own points, regardless of the buffs that she gives your army. But anyway, so you need 4 characters just to make this one unit work, which is actually quite a lot. But when they're only an average of 40 points each, so one's 35, one's 38, one's 40, and one's 45 points. So you're looking at roughly 160 points, okay, for those 4 characters. When you divide that if you were just to add that onto one unit of Repentia, yeah, that makes all of a sudden a 117-point unit, which is extremely points efficient, really expensive now, because it's now really expensive. Whereas if you're using these 4 characters to buff 3 units of Repentia and 3 units of another hard-hitting unit as well. So I've got in my list 3 units of Repentia, 3 units of Zephyrins. All of a sudden I've got 6 units now. So that means if I use my characters correctly in the right way, in the right order, and again getting your playtesting in, knowing when you should hold units back, when you should push, when you should bring units in from reserve, actually now 160 divided by, sorry, how many units did I say I've got getting buffed? 6 of them, haven't I?
Yeah.
So 160 points for those 4 characters divided by 6. Actually now that only adds on an extra 26 points per unit. So actually my sister Repentia is 117 points plus 26. So the value of that unit that I'm investing in for it to do its job is 143 points. And that's a 143 point valued unit that will kill anything in the game.
Bargain.
And I need 2 CPs each time for each unit to hit effectively. So, you know, as long as I've got 6 CPs, so I can advance in charge and then also get +1 to wound. Yeah, I need 6 CPs for that, and I just think when you start to know your army so well, then you can maximize your efficiencies of all your characters.
I think that's an interesting segue probably to the next one about CP spend.
Yeah, exactly that. So how do you then approach your stratagems, Jack, as a Tau player? And I want you to talk about now compared to when you first started playing Tau.
Yeah, so when I first started playing Tau, I was running a brigade.
Mm-hmm.
So 15 CP, great, lovely, loads of stratagems I could use and things like that. Now I have 6 CP at the start of the game.
And why do you only have 6? Or why do you only have 6? Not necessarily my question is, how are you making 6 CPs work? Or where have you got this number of 6 from?
So it's going down to, with Fire Warriors, they're so squishy, they're a wrap liability, and their damage output, unless you have lots of them, isn't very good. So I thought, well, I don't really want to run them. So as I started testing, can I make a list work with less CP without a battalion, basically?
Yep.
So that's where I got 3 detachments, a couple of Vanguards and an Outrider. So it got me to 6 CP. And then when you start practicing with less stratagems or less command points, you filter out certain stratagems.
Yep.
Like, actually, that's a nice to have. It's not essential. That's nice, but that's essential. And basically, all I really use my CP for is probably re-rolling an Inven save on a Riptide or re-rolling a Saviour Protocol, and potentially putting a Marker Light on something that's out of range of my Marker Lights.
Okay.
And that's probably all I'll ever use in the game now.
So so you've swapped CPs for just more damage output units?
Yeah, it's basically just all those 3 units Fire Warriors is 105 points. That's basically a Ghost Keel. That's 2/3 of a Ghost Keel paid for then, who can contribute more to the game.
Yeah, so you're relying on consistent results rather than, and you're only really using your stratagems to increase your odds of either completing a task or increasing your survivability.
Yeah, and 9 times out of 10 is survivability.
Nice. Okay, Joe, what about you in terms of... I remember a certain phase that I made you go through as a Dark Eldar player. What was that phase that you went through?
It was the dark days when me and you started playing, and I said I wanted to run Dark Eldar, and I would spend all of my CP in about 1.5 turns, and you're quite healthy on CP with Drukhari as well. But after a while, you forced me to not use Vect for like 2 months. Every game that we played, I wasn't allowed to use Vect.
Did it make you a better player?
Yes.
Okay, what did you learn from that experience?
You don't need it. It's like you don't need it, but you also save so much time as well because you're like, okay, you're like, okay, I'm gonna shoot my ravages at your I don't know, let's say knight, and then he's like, okay, I'm gonna rotate iron shields, and then you're like, stop the clock, like, do I vect this? Do I? Don't I? And then you go and stand in the corner and mull it over, and then you're like, no, I won't. It's not worth it. And he's like, okay, cool. Can I shoot now? And you're like, yeah, go on then. And then he's like, okay. Like 5 minutes later, okay, I'm gonna
CP re-roll this dice.
Yeah, I'm gonna CP re-roll this. Oh, do I vect this? Don't I? Where am I going with this? I'm not sure. And then he's like, okay, I'm gonna full tilt this knight. No, hang on, wait. Do I? Don't I? No. And then it carries on, and then he's like, okay, I'm gonna do it so my knight goes up to full, and you go, okay, I'll vect it, and you're like, finally I've done it, and then you roll a 1, and then you wasted it anyway, kind of thing. or you vect it and you feel super great, and then the knight does nothing anyway.
Yeah.
For that turn.
Or you spent all your CPs on things that you shouldn't have vected, and actually when the one came up that you should have, like, I'm going to put my knight on full bracket now, then you're in a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah, and also you spend all your CP, and then it gets to turn like 4 or 5, and you're like, okay, I failed 1 save on Lilith, and she's got a 3-up. She's going to die now. I really wish I had 1 CP to keep her alive, because that would stop my opponent from getting kill more.
Yeah, or like, I wish I had that 1 CP so I could fire and fade this unit that gets me on an objective which wins me this game because it's a 2-point swing, because it stops you getting to hold more or whatever.
Yeah, and it really taught me the lesson of like when to spend command points on stratagems and stuff.
Yeah.
So like going into the game now, I already know what stratagems I'm going to use and when, roughly.
Yeah.
Like that unit of I don't know, that unit of mortifiers is going to shoot my plane eventually, because that's the only unit that can shoot at my plane. So I know I'm going to spend 2 CP then to lightning fast. I'll put that aside.
Yeah.
Okay. These guys are going to get into combat with me. I know I'm going to have to lightning fast then. That's 2 to the side. Yeah. And it's like, okay, that unit's toughness 4. My witches are strength 4. I need to spend 2 CP to make them strength 5. I'll put that aside. So you're already allocating.
Yeah, or interrupt, which I think is one of the most powerful stratagems in the game, is the old interrupt to combat. So what you can be doing, guys, and again on the mentorship program, I have an entire 40-minute module about stratagems and command points. Like, not specifically about one faction, but overall in. But a nice little tip for you here is write down the stratagems you are going to use, and what I want you to do is write down all the stratagems you want to use. Then what I want you to do is remove 5 of those stratagems, because I'll be honest, they're probably just a luxury that you've put in and you don't really need them. Just because you want to do something doesn't mean you need to do it. And then what I want you to do is plan out turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, what stratagems you're going to spend in what order. And I'll give you an example, a very simple one. With my chaos list that I used to run, this was this was about 9 months ago. I had a very strict order in how I would spend my CPs. Turn 1, I would fire twice my bikes. They were Slanesh bikes, I would fire twice and I'd spend another CP plus 1 to wound. So I spend 3 CPs turn 1. Turn 2, I do the same with the obliterators. Okay, so turn 2, I spend another 3 CPs. Turn 3, I did it again. So that was another, and I think I had 12 CPs, so that now I've spent 9. Now I need to fire twice more often than get the plus 1 to wound, so I sacrificed that and I went for another one. And then in the last turn I can just do one more thing for that last remaining CPs. At no point did I ever use a reroll. At no point did I ever auto-pass morale. Do you know what I mean? Like, those were stratagems that I just didn't use because they weren't conducive to my game plan. Anyway, we've still got loads to talk about, and we're going to save, we've got psychic power usage, timing, knowing what your army does and doesn't do in certain matchups. We've got knowing the 10% and also unconscious cheating. we're going to talk about that on another episode, because I think we need to move on to the Better the Meta segment, which is going to be coming up after this short break. Okay guys, so we're back from the break and we're going to be talking about Ultramarines, how to beat them. So very quickly, this was the list that I took to SoCal. It is basically Marnius Calgar, he's the Warlord, he gives an extra CP I think, or two, can't remember it now off the top of my head, and then you've got a Lieutenant with a jump back. You've then got 2 units of 3 aggressors with the Bolt Storms. You've then got a big unit of 5 aggressors with the Bolt Storms. You've got a Repulsor Executioner just with Daka and Twin Las on, to his Twin Las cannon that is, with the aggressors go inside, or could go inside that. You've then got 2 Repulsor Executioners with more Daka in, obviously the big destroyer gun, not the plasma. And then they obviously can transport the 3-man units. And then I've got 3 units of suppressors, and then I've got 1 Thunderfire cannon. So that's the list, guys. Jack, what are some top tips to beating? Just pick one little aspect from a gunline perspective. You know, what's one thing you're going to be thinking about playing against the Ultramarines? What can you do?
So the majority of that, the power is in those aggressors in that list, which are of short range.
Yeah.
So what I'll be doing is I'll be targeting the suppressors, the repulsors, anything that's got long range, get that killed nice and early, and then just play a game of hide and seek with those aggressors after.
Okay, cool. So really staying outside of their threat range at all times, yeah?
Yes, definitely, because you don't want to get a tangle with them.
No, because when they move 5 inches and then they shoot 18
twice,
and they
shoot.
They always double shoot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess now with the Doctrine traits, you want to hide from them to at least turn 4, and then their efficiency will drop on it because they won't be able to move and double fire.
No, they can.
Oh, with relic or a warlord trait.
There's a stratagem and a warlord trait, so you can basically have 2 units constantly doing it.
I'll scrap that idea.
But this is why we have this segment, so you don't get caught out by it. So you're not just... Can you imagine you there waiting until turn 4, being like, "Phew, right, I waited this one out, now I'm going to go forward." Now I go, cool, warlord trait this one, stratagem that, and you're like, no!
I've not got enough drones.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. But yeah, I think in principle, staying outside of 23 inches is certainly... Because even if you make them advance, they can't then double shoot. So that's the goal. Just stay within 24 inches. Just tease them out, you know. Let them shoot, but just the once. Yeah.
And you might be looking to bait them into a charge or something like that to get them out of position to eliminate a unit or something.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Good. Joe. Jack and Joe. Yeah. It's a right nightmare for me here. 2 J's. You two aren't coming on the same podcast again. Joe, what are some of your experiences against playing my Ultramarines that you put into practice to try to beat me with them?
My experiences were never enjoyable, but I'd probably say find a way to not engage them, as ridiculous as that sounds. Like, not every game of 40k has to end with you decimating your opponent. So I'd probably say if your army is a bit of a glass cannon, or your army can't hold out those kind of full 6 turns, then pick secondaries that really maximize on points without you having to do anything to the Ultramarines. So get in like recon and engineers, stuff like that. There's only 1 Thunderfire cannon in that army, so if you can snipe that off early game, so like an Eldar player, get those planes out of range of their guns, of the Ultramarines guns, but in range enough that you can knock that out. Then you can hide your infantry, kind of score stuff.
Or you just sacrifice 1 plane, send it over, kill it, sacrifice it. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you give up, you might give up like Killmore turn 1 because you sent something out to die.
Yeah.
But you, in return, knowing that that's dead, you could get 8 points that game on secondaries because that Thunderfire cannon's not targeting your stuff that's hiding.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think it's a really great point there, Joe, you've made is if you're sacrificing units or putting units forward to try and get kills against the Ultramarines and you fail to do it because all of the units are very resilient except the suppressors. So as an Ultramarines player, I'd probably keep those suppressors in Deep Strike until turn 2 or 3 at least, because obviously I can get the, they can drop down and don't suffer the penalties for moving. But if I'm in that list, the suppressors are the easy kills. So if I'm going to give away a kill, I know it will be them, or it will be the 3-man aggressors, which I'm probably going to hide in the repulsor. So I can stop you from getting kills. But if you're putting units forward and giving me them, you're giving me kill more every turn, and you're not actually guaranteeing you're going to get a kill. So you can hide, stay out of range, stay out of threat range, stay out of everything, stay out of line of sight, and not get a kill. That's fine, but you're also not going to give away a kill, and that's just as important in this matchup. There's also another thing you definitely can't do against the Ultramarines, Jack, and what is that?
Charge it, isn't it? They've got the strat, haven't they?
Yeah.
To do Tower Overwatch, basically, haven't they?
Yep. So with the aggressors, if you charge any unit, they can spend, I think it's 2 CPs, and you can nominate 3 additional units within 6 of that unit to also Overwatch. So I can go, okay, yeah, all 3 repulsors are going to Overwatch, as well as the unit of 5-man aggressors, which can shoot as well.
You just won't make it into combat.
You won't make it.
If you do make it in, they're a right pain in the bum to try and wrap because they've all got power fists, and then their mates will turn up in a minute.
Yeah, there's a warlord trait so that all units can heroically intervene. So you just cannot charge them. It's kind of impossible.
And charging that army helps it as well because you're giving it like a leapfrog unit to get up the table faster. Yep.
They'll punch you back just as hard as you punch them, no doubt. And if you don't declare against, this is the dilemma you're in because, again, I have a video specifically about this on the program. Is that you can put your models down in such a way that all of your models can either heroically intervene, or if you don't declare them. So if you declare them, they can all Overwatch, and you don't want that. And if you don't declare them, they can all heroically intervene, so you can't even fight them.
And still Overwatch.
And they can still Overwatch, but it cost me 2 CPs to do it. So, so I think denying them kills is massive, whether that's staying out of threat range, not giving them extra movement by not charging or not putting units out. Don't try and move block them. It's not going to work because you're just going to give them free movement, and they're going to suffer from just moving 5 inches every turn. That's how you pin them. Play the long game, and I think you're going to do well then. Nice. I think we covered some good aspects there. So we're going to be back. We're having a quick short break, or should we just crack on with it now? We'll just crack on with it. Listener questions. So it's time for your listener questions, and these were 2 that I got off the lives that I did today and yesterday. Mike has asked, do you think you can make any army or faction competitive? They're thinking about running Space Wolves. Jack, over to you. Can you make any army competitive?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes to that one, based on the principles that we discussed earlier in the show. It's all about that practice. Get the practice in with your reps, learn your units, learn your auras, learn your CP spend, and then you can start to compete with at higher levels with other people that haven't practiced as much. The practice starts to show in the tournament setting. I see.
Here's a question for you, Jack. Imagine you got twins, and they are of equal skill level, okay? And we'll say that they're a typical, like, they probably go to a tournament, go 2 and 3 or 3 and 2. Yeah?
Yeah.
So sort of normally finish middle of the pack in a tournament. One of them took a net list, so a list they've just took off the internet from their favourite player that's just recently won an event. So let's say, I don't know, I've won an event with Blood Angels, someone's just downloaded my Blood Angel list. Or are you betting on the other twin that is been playing his army for 18 months and he took it to 20 different tournaments? Who is your money on?
So I think your Blood Angel list is quite technical, so it's not a pick up and play. So I'll back the more practice player in that one.
Yeah, regardless of whatever they played.
Yeah, almost. Yeah,
100%. I agree. What about you, Joe? Any tips for running Space Wolves?
I've heard Wolfen are good.
Wolfen are very good. Yeah, I've just ordered. Well, I've got 30 on the menu.
Yeah, I think when I look at all armies, really, Space Marine ones especially, is like look at what its talent is, what's its super doctrine in air quotes, and then kind of look at what maximizes that ability.
Yeah.
What gets the best out of it. So the Space Wolf all over one is the +1 to hit, isn't it?
Yeah. +1 to hit.
Yeah, +1 to hit.
And 6-inch 6-inch heroic intervention.
Yeah. So who massively benefits from getting +1 to hit? Thunder hammers.
Power
if you
fists.
can staple power fist, if you can staple a power fist or a thunder hammer to a model, you do it.
Yeah. There's also an interaction that you and I spoke about, isn't there? Like everyone's been talking about Ragnar, that he's so good, bloody bloody blah. I don't rate him, and the reason for that, in the builds that I've been putting together, Wolfen are very very quick because they can advance in charge. Ragnar is not going to make it unless you start giving him his own little private limo of a impulsor or something. But he cannot, because heroic intervention happens in the charge phase. There's a very unique ability that units with the fly keyword get. So therefore, if you've got all your characters behind some thick screens so they cannot be charged or declared against, but are within 6 inches of the front line, they can jump over their own infantry if they have a jump pack. Ragnar does not have a jump pack. Wolf Cavalry do not get that ability. So if you're taking Space Wolf characters without jump packs, without that fly keyword, you're getting the +1 to hit, which you don't really need because you hit on 2s anyway. Then, and again, like you want to put a Thunder Hammer or a Power Fist on that model to get its real benefit, and also you're not going to get the benefit from that 6-inch heroic intervention because you're not going to have your characters out in the open, are you?
No, I think with Ragnar, that dude's an absolute blender. So I think with him, your issue is going to be killing too much, and then he's going to be left out on his Todd.
Yeah.
If you don't get those other units in around to protect him, you'll find him being killed very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's exactly it. So, nice. And then we've got another listener question, but I'm actually going to save this till next week because we've already been, podcasting for an hour now. So, we'll cover that one on next week's show because I think it's a really, really good question, and we can go into a little bit more detail on this one. Joe, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
It's been a delight to interact with you where you're not beating me at a game.
Mate, I feel hurt. Just be grateful we can't go to the gym anymore together, mate.
I know, but every time I sit on my exercise bike at home, I will imagine you shouting at me like the evil Russian ballet teacher you are.
Novak!
No, hitting me with a riding crop.
Yeah, we give Joe a lot of abuse, but he loves it. It's just mine and Joe's little relationship there. Yeah, people thinking, that guy Stevie's really mean to Joe.
Yeah,
and they wouldn't be wrong, would they?
They see me laughing on the outside. They don't see me crying in the shower when I get home.
Do you remember that time when I sent you outside when we were playing a game to think about your decision?
Yeah, you were like, what do you need to do now? And I'm stood there looking at him glassy-eyed, and I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, go outside and think about it. I'm like, I don't know. And then for some reason, I stood outside, like, as a grown-up, being told by another grown-up to go and stand outside. And I'm shouting at him, I don't know! Tell me! And he's like, think about it. And it's one of those, like, it's like when you're talking to your girlfriend, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. And it's just like you're going around in that horrible circle of one person knows, the other person doesn't know, but nothing's happening.
Joe, I know what you should have done in that scenario.
What's
It's
that?
probably the same thing you should do with your girlfriend. Go to the pub.
Right. Yeah.
I'm off to the Winchester. I'm actually crying. Literally crying. But no, you did actually come back and make the correct decision, though, didn't you?
I did. But unfortunately, you can't do that at tournaments. But that's why you have practice games. That's why you have an evil mistress of death who stands across the table to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm there for, Joe.
Everyone else gets nice, Steve, because I'm a human punchbag.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. Anyway, after that, Jack, thanks so much for coming on, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Obviously we now have the new Vanguard Tactics studio, which we're still deciding on a name, so maybe we can discuss it on next week's episode. And obviously that is a massive thank you to Foreground Publishing. So if you're looking for some terrain, definitely go and check those guys out. And we'll be doing loads together in the future, which is extremely exciting. I just can't use the studio at the moment, but obviously until this lockdown I become unlocked, then I'm back in that studio. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for coming on again, and we'll see you all on another episode of the Competitive 40k podcast. See you later.